everybody, Heather and Barb here with the Friends of the Page Walker, and as promised, we're here at the High House Cemetery. What's really cool about this cemetery is, I know I've written about the legend of the High House. The High House is where High House Road got its name. The house doesn't exist anymore, but we do have pictures, and it's got all these legends around it. I talked about them on our Halloween live stream. Some of the legends are that there was buried treasure underneath the chimney of the High House, even after it was torn down. There are other legends saying that the woods around the High House, that people wandered there and got lost and then came back seeming as if possessed. Now, when I say legends, there are primary sources that talk about these stories, so I'm not sure if they're true or based in truth or just kind of the ghost stories that are passed down from old Caryites. But people would always ask, where is the cemetery? And I had no idea. I've looked for it. I thought it was probably under Publix. Barb here also had been asked. We didn't really know where it was. We thought it might have been built over. And then I'm going to give it to Barb because she's kind of the one who first came out here and looked for it, and she's got a story to tell about it. And then we're going to go inside the cemetery and let you guys see it in person. So I'm going to hand over to Barb.
Okay, very good. Actually, the way that I learned about where this cemetery was from you all, from one of our Facebook followers, Emily. I hope you're watching. Thank you very much for.
Do you need me to flip it around for you so they can see?
Sure. Yes, I'm going to flip this around and show you where we are. What happened is when Emily sent us a map where she believed the cemetery was, I realized that it was very close to my house, within a half a mile of my house. So I talked my neighbor into coming out for an evening walk with me and looking for it. And we arrived here. This is where we thought the cemetery should be according to the map. And we found this lovely little park. And we said, well, maybe there's nothing left of the cemetery and they just put this park here to commemorate where it used to stand. But nonetheless, I walked up here, I saw these bushes in the back, and I saw what looked like a fence behind the bushes, and I said, well, let me just get down on my hands and knees and look through the bushes. And lo and behold, I saw what I thought might be gravestones, and my friend looked and she thought so too, and so we started making our way along this fence to see if we could figure out a way to get a better view and get inside there. So I'm going to hand this back to Heather because she's way better at this than me, but I will be joining you again to tell you some stories about the history of the High House.
Yes, Barb is still here. She's walking with me. And as we get to different graves, she's going to have things to say about them because she has done some serious research on the graves here. And one of the things she would have had to research is, it's very muddy there. One of the things she would have had to research is how to prove and determine that these graves really are family members that would have been related to or connected to the High House. Now this is the entrance. You can see how even if you lived here in this neighborhood, you might not realize this is here. Oh, there's a glare. It looks like it's someone's yard. Most of them, that yard over there has a black fence too. So I think most people would probably just assume this is a yard. There's a nice steep hill. Yep. But lo and behold, yep, if you peek through it way in the back there, you can see some headstones. And there's some, I believe, Barb had told me, getting in is a trick too. Yeah. I think you lift the top there. And then I'll pull here. There we go. And now I believe that Barb told me there are 18 graves.
Yes, so what happened here is when we were doing some research, because we had quite a few family accounts saying that members of the old family that used to live here, the Alford family and the Williams family, and we're going back now to the 1800s. There are family accounts from the 1800s saying that the second known owner of the High House, who was Green Alford, was buried in a family plot near the house. So even though there are only 3 tombstones still standing, and actually they're not standing here.
I think there's this little one over here.
That might be the footstone.
Oh, I see.
For this grave.
Okay, see here, I thought this was a headstone. Yeah, this little guy here.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. There's nothing written on it.
Yeah, I think it's the footstone. They use footstones often.
Let's show them. Let's see. So you can see, I mean, the headstones are all, except for that one, they're all fallen over.
Yeah.
It would be hard to tell what this is if you didn't come back here and look.
Yeah. All 3 of these stones bear the name Stedman. And that is what kind of started us going on a little bit of a research journey. Like, why Stedman? Who was Stedman? And we learned that Green Alford, again, he was the second known owner of the High House. He purchased it in 1833. And he had 9 daughters and 2 sons. One of his daughters was Mary, and she married Joseph Stedman. And now Joseph Stedman was somewhat well known in Cary during the Civil War. He fought during the Civil War, and after the war he was on the very first committee to figure out how to open up public schools in Cary. So he was a significant character. And this grave that Heather was just showing you, this is Mary. This is Mary's grave. This is Green's daughter, Mary. So.
Wow, and we did have somebody who said on our a picture I put up of the High House that their grandparents are in that picture, or their great-grandparents.
Yes, very interesting.
We'd love to hear from you guys, and tell us more about that.
Yeah, we'd love to know who those people
now,
are
guys,
in the picture.
I hate to take you away from history for just a second, but I have a story about this headstone. And let me tell you, okay, so I put up a picture of this headstone after I came here that day. And by the way, Barb gave a wonderful talk. There were like 30 or 40 people out here. The kids were exploring out here and figuring out what pieces were, like that might be the base of a headstone. And it was just so wonderful to see kids getting like a hands-on excitement about history. But this headstone right here, I put a picture of it up, and it had what looked like a lens flare. But several people commented on it, unprovoked, saying that that lens flare looked like an orb. And then they literally were seeing what looked like faces floating above. Like, one of them looked like a guy with a mustache and a hat. There was a woman's face here, which I think is probably just this right here. But the guy with the mustache and the hat really, he was very noticeable to me.
Yeah.
But what knocked me off my feet was then I sent the pictures to Barb. And without any provocation, she also said, I think there might be something in that picture. So that one picture has gotten a lot of attention, and it's of this headstone.
Yeah, it was a big orb. Big, perfectly oval orb.
It was.
In that spot.
And then a face floating above it. It was very odd. So if you don't believe in ghosts, like, I think legends and spooky history are part of our cultural history and our oral history and our oral tradition, so it's worth keeping them alive. But that in particular just struck me as odd about this one picture.
Yeah, and there is no legible marking on this particular stone.
So we don't know who this is?
We don't know who this is. We do not know who this is. We've looked at the back side, and there's just no legible markings on it, unfortunately.
Do you have any idea why so many of these would be broken?
Well, when we see this, we often think about vandalism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when stones are completely snapped and laying on the ground. This one actually is still somewhat standing. This, I believe, was the. This is William. Is it William? There's a son of Mary and Joseph buried here, and a daughter. I think this is William, the son. And then Ada, oh no, I'm sorry, this must be Ada.
And then this one over here is William.
Yeah, this one is William.
Now this one's got the most clear writing. You can actually kind of see, blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yep.
Died at 29 years old. Wow.
Yep. In 1890.
1890. And they were borned.
Born.
They
yes,
weren't
all
born.
These stones say born.
They were borned. They were born on November 14th. Of 1860.
1860.
So if you ever mess up and say, oh, they were born, you can just say, oh, they said that historically. and it's okay.
Yeah, so again, going back to the family stories about Mary's father and mother and some other members of the family, along with their enslaved persons during the 1800s, also being buried here.
Oh, so we think there are enslaved people buried here.
The family stories say so.
Wow, so that's probably the unmarked graves. We're going to show you guys the unmarked graves too in a minute.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there could be other family members here who also no longer have a stone marking their resting place. But the reason we know there are 18 graves here is because when the developer who was developing this neighborhood in 2003, 2004, encountered this cemetery, he must have had an archaeological survey done, because there was a story in the News and Observer in 2003 that there were 18 confirmed graves here, and each one were marked by an orange flag at that time. So that just lends credence to the family stories that Green and Nancy are likely buried here, along with possibly others.
Interesting.
We don't know where Joseph Stedman is buried. We have looked and looked, and we can't find a record of where he is buried. So he very well might be buried here too, but he doesn't have a stone marking his grave.
And let me show you guys something. So this is what, when we came out here, like on Halloween actually is when we came out here, we began to notice, so this is very likely the older part of the graveyard. And the reason we think that is because obviously there are remaining stones over here, and these stones are from the late 1800s, but we think this should be an older cemetery. Therefore, we think there's probably older graves here. And we noticed, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but there's a ripple effect all down this line. And what we think that probably is where there were graves buried just so along here, side by side, and that they're sunken. Because back then, I mean, the materials that you would have used, and I think they didn't put anything to help stabilize it. And so in older graveyards, you will often see this kind of ripple pattern like the ocean, some deeper than others, and you can tell that that's where a grave is. So be careful not to step where you see those sunken areas, because you're stepping literally in somebody's grave. But that makes me think there's probably people buried side by side this way. And then we found these other clues over here. Now this, I think it was Carla who mentioned this?
Yeah.
So we also found, I'm going to show you guys in a minute, but I wanted to show you this first. This is what caught my eye. This to me looks like an older gravestone. If you ever look at gravestones from the early 1800s or 1700s, they are very different looking. They're usually very oblong. They're not shaped perfectly. They're usually very thin and tablet-like. They look very like you'd see in like those, like, you know, whenever you see like a ghost movie from the 1700s, and you have those very eerie looking headstones. They look a lot more like that. But there's a reason for that. You know, historically, obviously the materials were different. But this right here, we think could have been a grave marker. Could be, if we do have some members, people that they had enslaved here, this could be a marker for that. Or it could be a marker for kind of the beginning of the row.
Yeah.
And
I would think that the enslaved person's markers would not outlast the family members. You know, you would think that there would be a more permanent.
Could it be the trees?
Well, we think these are remnants of cedar trees that we see placed here in the front part of the cemetery. And of course, if you're not aware, cedar trees are very common in older cemeteries. If you're out in the country and you see a cluster of cedar trees, chances are there's probably a few graves buried nearby them. They used to plant cedar trees in old cemeteries because of the symbolism of them being evergreen and, you know, representing everlasting life. And as well, the cedar tree is actually the most often mentioned tree in the Bible. Oh. So there's a religious connection to the cedar tree as well.
So when we see them here, and I did not know that. That was such a cool thing for me to find out. Yeah. Carla had mentioned when she saw these, that these very well might be
these look
other
like old
markers.
cedar trees.
Well,
I'm not sure they're grave markers. I think they might have been just the cedar trees that would have been planted to designate that this was a cemetery.
That makes sense. And we've
Yeah.
got several of them here. We have that one.
Yeah, and then we have this one over here, which is
And this one's huge.
Now this kind of tells us that this one was here for a long time.
And it's right at the entrance area here, too.
Yeah.
Which is significant because if they did the developer, so I have to give a virtual high five to the developer, because when the developer had a surprise cemetery in the land, which is, especially in Cary, seems to be really common that you get these cemeteries in the middle of neighborhoods. You guys have probably seen us cover quite a few stories like that throughout October. It seems pretty common in Cary to have cemeteries turn up in neighborhoods. And in this case, the developer found a surprise cemetery, and he did the right thing, and he hired professionals to come in and to do a survey of the land, and that's how they were able to determine that 18 people were buried here.
Yeah.
In my mind, this could be a marker.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It could be.
In an old cemetery, at Oberlin Cemetery, which that's in Raleigh, and it did have quite a number of members of, enslaved peoples who lived in Raleigh during that time are buried there in Oberlin. And a lot of times they didn't have the money or the ability to get a headstone, and they would mark their graves with like a hat, a shoe, a toy, and that would just be the marker. And so I heard from Friends of Oberlin, when they were cleaning up there, they had to be very careful not to throw anything and be very careful what they moved, because something could look like trash, and it turns out it's important.
Yeah. Talking about the developer, that the newspaper article quoted him as saying once he realized there were 18 grave sites here, because he was apparently thinking about moving the 3. But once he realized that there were 18 here, he decided to leave the cemetery as is and build around it. And that must be why we've got this fenced-in perimeter that is much bigger than needed to hold the 3 gravestones that we can see. So that's another indication that, there are more people buried here for sure.
Definitely. Yeah,
and
you're
now,
right.
I don't know if Heather can point you to, the High House. We are hearing traffic from High House Road.
Oh, yes.
While we are in this cemetery, we can see it. I can see the cars going by.
Yes, we can see High House Road from here.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to say this. This is private land. Please do not come looking for this cemetery. We are showing it to you for historic purposes. High House Road is right out there. But we're showing you this for historic purposes so that you don't have to come looking for it.
It's privately owned now.
It's privately owned. It belongs to there's homes right beside it. So I would not suggest coming out looking for it because it is privately owned, and you could definitely be seen prowling around out here.
We have permission.
We have permission today.
To do so. But I wanted to mention that the High House itself sat to the east of us here on the intersection.
There it is. No, I'm just
the intersection of Northwest Maynard Road and the High House Road. So it sat on the southwest corner of Northwest Maynard Road and High House Road.
Yes, and I did go out there around Halloween time, and I did a live stream at the corner of Maynard and High House, and I believe there's a greenway trail there now.
Yes, there's an entrance to one of the greenway trails.
And I could not find any remnants or any clues, but I did hear apparently that used to actually be a hill, and it's not anymore.
Yeah, they filled in some of the land there. If anybody watching us knows anything about when that house met its demise, because I actually ran into a person this morning who says they remember seeing it in the 1970s. I'm like, well, that goes against what we've read in some family accounts that say that it was no longer there as of 1930. So there's no recorded information about what happened to the house. So it's a mystery to us. Like, when did it meet its demise?
It's a mystery, and then finding this really helped unlock part of the mystery because we had not really known. And when I say it's hidden, I don't mean nobody on earth knew that this was here. Obviously, if you lived in the neighborhood, you might realize it was here. But more that the people who realized it was here more than likely didn't realize what it was, and that the people who knew that there was something to look for, we didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
So finally the information really fully came together full circle. And I do want to say, because I think we've shown you everything, it's a pretty small cemetery, but I did want to say, Barb wrote a lot about this in her recent blog on the Friends of Paige Walker website. So take a look at our website. I'll share the blog again as soon as the stream is over on our Facebook to help you find it. She has so much historic information there. It's way more than we even shared today.
Oh, yeah.
Take a look at that. There's pictures. You can see a picture of the High House and really get a deeper understanding of all of this history mystery that is still being unfolded. Also, take a look at our website. I do know that we're selling memberships to become a member of the Friends of Paige Walker, so take a look at that information. See if you're interested in supporting what we're doing. We do need people to become members and donate and things like that because it helps us to bring you microphones and better quality videos, and it just helps us preserve Cary history that much better. So if you've liked what we've been bringing you, we're definitely going to keep bringing it to you. It's totally free. Watch our stuff. We love for you to learn about Cary history, but if you want to take another step and support us and be part of the Friends, you can go to our website and learn more about how to do that too. But definitely check out her blog. That's just a lot of great information. She did so much research for that.
And Carla, my partner Carla, we both got sucked into the 1800s. We were looking at old deeds and wills and tax records and going back to why the Stedmans are here. Green Alfred, those 9 daughters that he had, when he died, the land that he owned was divided among those 9 daughters. So the Stedmans wound up living in this area as well as all the other daughters. His 2 sons did not. They had already been, I guess, left. One of them moved to Middle Creek, and his son, so Green Alfred's grandson, became the founder of Holly Springs. His name was George Benton Alford. So if any of you are familiar with the Leslie Alford Mims house in Holly Springs, that is the Alford for which that house is named. So that's how we determined that the Stedmans wound up being buried here, because they actually wound up living here by inheriting some of the land when Green died. And the Williams family, the daughter Penina married Robert Williams, and that is how the High House fell into their hands.
Yes, there's a lot of mystery there, and all this history is going to be in her blog, so take a look at that. And otherwise, I think we're going to cut it for today. But if you want even more, take a look at her blog. All that great info is there, and we will be doing another live stream later this month. Do you know where we're doing it? Do you remember?
I think we're moving out of cemeteries.
We are moving out of cemeteries.
Yeah, we feel like we've been bringing you nothing but cemeteries so far. So we are going to focus on the first public high school in the state of North Carolina, and that would be Cary High School. So we're going to go and visit the old, what's now the Art Center, and the downtown area where a lot of the teachers and staff used to live, and bring you the history of Cary High School. It's a big part of Cary's history.
Huge, and there's so much history there. We're talking about the history of integrating schools. There's just a lot of rich history there. I hear people over there. That's where I left my purse. I just want to make sure they don't go looking for it. All right, so yeah, we'll be doing that, and then we have even more really exciting plans for December. If you have any ideas of history you want to see covered, especially as we're running into Thanksgiving and into Christmas, let us know. Leave a comment, send a message, and we'll be doing lots of really cool content themed around the holidays as we come up. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you later this month. Bye, everybody.